Might be able to come clean him up though.
The spirit urn is waiting to
I'm coming, don't worry.
God, Abrams.
Holy mother of all slams. Oh! Oh! Hey guys, welcome to a build breakdown. So I've given you guys a couple of days to figure out, what you like to play and enjoy the discovery phase. And now I'd like to showcase to you, first of all, a Lash build, because Lash is my favorite hero and I love playing Lash. And I'd like to share with you guys the discoveries that I've made and, the new ways that you can play Lash that are very, very effective in the new patch. So as you can see, I just put a little clip before this. That was kind of a cool clip that I just wanted to share and build some hype. But let's get into the build. So I'm going to speak about every item in the build. For those of you that just wanted to see the build, it's called Deathy's Full Spirit Lash. So you can see it right here on the screen. If you'd like to take a screenshot, build these items, feel free. I'll put the build ID in the description below as well. Now, I'm going to go over every item in the build and explain why I prefer this item compared to alternatives, which situations I would skip these items in or change the order, right? Because no build fits every game and you need to be able to be flexible, and the logic behind all of these choices. Let's get into it. Starting with Quicksilver Reload, the reason I rush Quicksilver Reload is because it gives you damage on your Flog. Lash's lane is overall not that strong, and so getting some good sustain with damage on your Flog really allows your lane to be much, much stronger, in my opinion. Gives him good sustain, good poke, and allows him to take trades on a very short cooldown. Once you get 2 points in Flog, right, your Flog's a 12-second cooldown, which almost exactly matches Quicksilver. Quicksilver being a 16-second cooldown. And so once you have these items, you can essentially just, go to any hero. And as you can see, you'll hit him for about 140, right? So it's a very, very good trading tool. The second item, Mystic Burst, if you can afford to get there, is essentially same idea as Quicksilver Reload, right? Which is to just make it, let me just enable no death and get this guy back to full health. But it's same idea, right? You just want to do more damage with Flog. And so if you do this with Flog, all of a sudden you're hitting for 182 every Flog. And if I go half health and I get some healing, this will heal me for a lot once I wait for these items to be off cooldown. As you can see, I hit one hero with Flog, I heal for 93. This is, a very significant amount of healing on top of the damage that you're doing to them. So you're healing for, you're hitting them for almost 200 damage and you're healing for almost 100 health. So you can essentially see that it's a 300 health swing. And if you hit both heroes, you'll almost heal for 200, right? So if you can Flog both heroes with just these two items, you're getting a ton of sustain. And you essentially want to look to trade every time that you have Flog up because it's very beneficial to you. And you want to try to hit, both people if possible. Now, part of the reason why this is better than it used to be is because Quicksilver Reload is a little bit cheaper to rush because you start with 400 souls. So even though it's 1600, it only takes you 1200 souls to get there. So you get there a little bit faster. And also, people's relative power is lower in the early game. People don't do as much damage as early in the lane, so you can be a little bit greedier. And on top of that, they're only going to have one 800 cost item by the time you get to Quicksilver. Whereas before, they would have two 500 costs, if that makes sense, right? So they're not going to be significantly stronger than you, even though you're rushing Quicksilver. Now, you do need to play the lane passively at first. Now, talking about the other items, extra stamina is pretty self-explanatory. This item has always been almost mandatory on Lash. Lash is a hero that is very reliant on mobility. So there's a lot of mobility in this build, and there's a lot of mobility in every good Lash build, in my opinion. Your hero relies on being able to position for your ultimate, for your slams. All of your abilities, kind of require positioning. And so extra stamina is just a very, very valuable buy. And you can delay this buy a little bit, but I would never skip this item. Enchanters Emblem is just very strong. When you're above 65% health, you get Spirit Power and Cooldown Reduction, both of which are insanely strong on Lash. And, 18% Spirit Resist. Once you buy this item, essentially, combined with your base Spirit Resist, you're already at 26% Spirit Resist. So if you're playing against Spirit-heavy teams, Lash feels really, really good because he's got a lot of innate Spirit Resist, especially he can buy Enchanter's Emblem and Goldfront, which is an item later. And once you have these two items, all of a sudden you're at 34% Spirit Resist with, minimal investment. And these are items that also give you some nice bonuses to your damage overall. Mystic Shot is very strong, and it's the only weapon item that I buy in this build. There are some other weapon items that you can consider, for example, monster rounds, or even, if you'd like to go Headhunter. These are items that are very good. I don't personally like playing that playstyle, and so I think Mystic Shot is probably the best weapon item. Part of the reason for that is, at the moment, Mystic Shot doesn't have fall off, right? So if I hit this guy, well, I just missed, but let's say that I hit this guy all the way over here, and I'm going to miss again, but third time's the charm, right? Okay, so I hit him. As you can see, I'm going to hit him again, and it's 75 damage, even if it's really far. On top of that, this item gives you 7 spirit power, so I think that it's very, very strong. 8-second cooldown, and it also scales with spirit, and since we're very, very spirit heavy in this build, once you get the full build, it definitely does a lot of damage. Goldfront, like I said, Lash is a burst hero, so getting an item that gives you 127 damage extra, 125 base, and then scales off spirit. On top of the movement slow, so it makes it harder for people to run away as well. This item has always been a Lash staple and probably always will be a Lash staple, and so that hasn't changed with the new update. Healbane gives you spirit power. 7 spirit power is definitely, you know, nothing to laugh at. And on top of that, you know, healing reduction and heal on hero kill. A lot of people forget that anti-heal exists on the new patch. I feel like there's a lot of people not buying Healbane, but it's, you know, still the best anti-heal option that's cheap. All the other anti-heal options are fairly expensive, and so it's just a good pickup on Lash. And last but not least, extra charge. Now, extra charge did actually get significantly worse on Lash, and rapid recharge too. So before, like, extra charge and rapid recharge gave cooldown to the charged ability, which was, you know, very useful for Lash. But now it gives bonus spirit power for charged abilities, which is literally completely useless for Lash because it doesn't actually scale off spirit at all. Like, it doesn't have any spirit scaling. Maybe if the cast range has spirit scaling, it'd be better. But this ability has nothing. And so Lash does kind of get fucked by the new extra charge / rapid recharge change, but overall, you know, it's still a valuable item just to be able to get a second grapple, and allows you to delay putting points in grapple, because if you don't have a second charge, you kind of need to put 1 point, but having a second charge allows you to skip this 1 point and go for a different AP order. As far as the tough lane items, I mean, you don't really want to buy these. If you have to buy one of these, you know, just make sure that you buy one. Usually buying 2 of these is going to feel bad. I would say most of the time it's going to be extra regen or healing, right? If you're really hurt, just buy right. It's always nice to have. And, you know, since you want to be active around the map and roam, it's very nice. Mystic regen, I would say, is like a last resort. I wouldn't really buy this item much on Lash. And extra regen is just, it's kind of nice, but I would, you know, prefer buying right most of the time. Now let's talk about the mid-game power spike. So one of the things that has changed a lot with Lash this patch is the new item Spirit Sap and Silence Wave, right? So before, Lash would consider buying Silence Cliff, and essentially the way that you would play it is you would ult and then you would Silence Cliff people, right? So you would ult, once you had max ult, you would like slam into them after the ult, and then you would use Silence Cliff and it would silence all of them, and it was a powerful combo already. Now the new Silence Wave item has a very, very far range and a big AoE. Silence Cliff's AoE was like okay, but it wasn't quite as good. As you can see, the Silence Wave item, it silenced the guy all the way over there, right? I can silence the guy all the way over there. It's 40 meters cast range, which is very long. So even while you're in the air, let's say that I'm here, right? I can just cast it from like super high and get on the zip line, just cast it, use my combo, and it'll amp my damage. Now, why is this so strong? 2 reasons. One, a lot of heroes have abilities that allow them to dodge your slam. For example, Ivy Stoneform, Pocket Suitcase, Yamato ult, you know, things like that. If you use the Silence Wave before slamming onto them, they can't use those abilities. And second is that it reduces the spirit resist of those heroes, meaning that minus 12% spirit resist, it essentially amps your spirit damage by roughly 12%. Now, I'm not going to say the math on that is correct, but it's essentially an amp for all of your damage, on top of being insane utility, because silencing people is always really strong. In my opinion, this item is like one of your biggest mid-game power spikes. And, you know, I would say that this item is pretty much mandatory on Lash at the moment. Maybe it'll get nerfed again. It already got nerfed once on the cooldown. It might get nerfed again. I wouldn't be surprised. But until it does, I'd say it's mandatory. And even if it gets nerfed, I think Lash really is one of the best users of it. And so I think it's going to be bought on Lash for a very long time. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the mobility equals win section, this is very true. You either pick one or both, either Stamina Mastery or Majestic Leap. So essentially the way that I determine this usually is how good of a Lash ult game is it? So if I see that they have a bunch of people that are either itemizing against my ult, or if there are a bunch of people that can dodge my ult innately, for example, Pocket, Ivy, Yamato, anyone with iframes, you know, Mirage, for example, again, or if they can cancel my ult easily, then I'm not really looking to build Majestic Leap, because I think Majestic Leap is really, really nice for hitting ults. Now, it's not a bad item either way. I don't think you'll ever make a mistake buying this item, but sometimes it's just not optimal when I need other items. Now, Stamina Mastery, I would say that pretty much every game I'll buy this item. Usually if I buy Leap, I'll also buy Stamina Mastery, right? So Stamina Mastery, I'll always buy. Sometimes I'll buy Leap. If I have Leap, I usually have both, essentially. Mobility is like super key, and when you have both of these items, the movement that you can do is like, you know, pretty crazy. Like to set yourself up for an ult, like you can show up to fights like really far and like get huge ults from the skybox. And so this is very, very, very useful on Lash. Tank Buster is just like the best damage item in the game for spirit builds. If your hero can proc it, if you have an ability that does more than 165 damage, then you essentially want this. With this build, we'll talk about the AP ordering in a little bit. Your only ability that procs it is Slam for a while, but it's so much damage, right? Especially if the target has a lot of health. For example, on the training dummy here, who's got a lot of health, if I Slam from the skybox, you know, I'm doing 551 damage, and this is without any points in Slam, and with, you know, relatively small amount of Spirit. So you can imagine if I max Slam and I go for it again, it's going to do a lot of damage. Now, Warpstone. Warpstone is superior cooldown. The order of these can change sometimes. If I feel like I need Warpstone earlier, sometimes I'll go it fairly early, especially if they have like a lot of gun damage and I'm getting melted. Let's say that they have, you know, a Haze or like a Viper or things like that. Then, you know, I'll usually go Warpstone. I'll go Warpstone pretty much every game, to be honest, just because of the movement, but sometimes I'll go it earlier. This item is just like super strong, you know, similar idea as all the other items you buy on Lash. So if I have Majestic Leap, Warpstone and stuff, I can do things like that, where I just move across the entire map like very, very quickly. And Lash is all about being at the right place at the right time, right? If you get a big ultimate, even just like a 1 or 2 man ultimate in the right fight, you can win your team the game. And so that's what it's all about with Lash. And that's why like I'm buying all these mobility options. On top of that, once you have superior cooldown, I mean, all of these actives are very short cooldown, right? So Warpstone becomes an 11.7 seconds cooldown. Majestic Leap is 23 seconds. Silence Wave is 20 seconds. And so all of these active items just feel really, really nice to use with superior cooldown on top of that. Let's talk quickly about the experiment section. So Restorative Locket is in here. I was recommended this item by Disco Virtuoso, OCE player. It actually makes a lot of sense. Now it gives you 2 stamina points when you use it, right? And when you have superior stamina and Restorative Locket, you kind of feel unkillable. So usually if I go Restorative Locket, I wouldn't go Leap. And the games that I'll go Restorative Locket, usually I'll try to go at like semi-early. You don't want to delay this item too much because it does give you like a nice power spike in the mid-game. And it's especially good against heroes that spam abilities, you know, like Geist or Mirage or Yamato or heroes like that, right? So use your own judgment on this, but I think that this item is very strong. And also the heal skills off Spirit. So as you can see now, I have a lot of Spirit, and now it would heal me for 30 per stack for 20 stacks, which is, you know, quick math, a total of 600 HP, which is quite a lot, on top of the fact that it, you know, regens 2 stamina. So it really, really helps you with your escapes, and it can also help you support your team as well. Now let's talk about tier 4 items. So I've put 6 tier 4 items in this build. Essentially, each of them have kind of a condition. I'll add some annotations as I upload the video as well, just to help people. I think Arctic Blast is the worst option. I don't think it's that good. I think it's like late game you upgrade it. The reason why it's not that good is because you don't benefit at all from the frozen bonus like damage amp. What I mean by that is the way that you have to use Arctic Blast, you have to use it after your slam, right? So you have to first slam and then use Arctic Blast. What that means is that most of your damage has already been done, right? As opposed to an item like Silence Wave, which allows you to Silence Wave first and then slam. So it might not seem like a big difference, but it's a huge difference. And if you look, the freeze duration is fairly short, right? And it's not really that much of an upgrade in damage from Coldfront. So it right now does 211, but if I just have Coldfront, it would do 145. So it gives me an extra 60 or 70 damage, but for the 4,800 souls that it costs, I don't think it's really worth it most of the time. I will delay this item until I literally have nothing else to buy on Lash usually. Spirit Burn is very strong, and I think that Spirit Burn should be the first tier 4 item that you buy on Lash if you can afford to. It does so much damage, and the fact that it has 70% healing reduction is just very, very valuable. So most of the time, this will be my first tier 4. On top of that, it gives you 10% ability range, which is just nice to hit some ultimates. Boundless Spirit is luxury on Lash. I don't think it's priority. Sometimes, you know, I'll buy it if I just have slots. And the nice thing is once you get Spirit Burn, you can sell Healbane for a slot because you don't need the Healbane for the healing reduction anymore. So, you know, you can replace Healbane with either Boundless or Mystic Reverb. Mystic Reverb, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, this build is like, you know, you're playing for slams, you're playing for big damage. And Reverb plus Tank Buster, I mean, does just a lot of damage, right? I can just showcase it real quick. I'm just gonna, you know, use my slam from up here. My slam did almost 800 damage, and then 389 from reverb. And this, you know, I know that the target dummy has a lot of health, but there are heroes in the game now that get to this amount of health without too much problem. So it's not an unrealistic scenario necessarily anymore. And finally, the greens, Unstoppable and Divine Barrier. My opinion on these, Unstoppable, you should buy when they have things that essentially prevent you from using your ult. Against really good players, this item will probably be mandatory a lot of games because, you know, they'll buy curses or they'll be able to knock you down out of your ult, things like that. And so this item is just quite good, and it builds out of debuff reducer. So if you're going to buy Unstoppable, you should probably buy debuff reducer earlier. And Divine Barrier is very, very strong. If you don't need Unstoppable, I much prefer Divine Barrier. I think it's an insane item on Lash. Gives you 15% ability range, which if you combo that with Spirit Burn, all of a sudden, you know, you'll have 25% ability range. Now, depending on the game, if you go Majestic Leap, right, and Silence Wave and Coldfront, sometimes you might need to actually sell Coldfront in order to fit this, which I do think is worth it because this item is insane at supporting your team as well. So yeah, it really depends on the game, but I think that this is a very solid option. Sometimes you might not have Majestic Leap, and I'd rather have this item as well. Sometimes you might not have Warpstone, so it really depends on the game. You know, use your own judgment. The reason why I think it's so strong is because I think Lash in this build is very good at just also playing utility, playing for your ult, and helping your team, and using Divine Barrier on your teammates. When you have, you know, superior cooldown, this item is so good at using on your teammates. As you can see here, I'm just going to use it on my teammate. I have no cooldown enabled. Let me disable that. And it's a 16-second cooldown, and this is after the nerf. It just got nerfed pretty bad from a cooldown perspective, but it's still only a 16-second cooldown when you use it on your teammates. So you can spam this, you know, remove a bunch of debuffs from your team, and just overall play like a more of a utility role, more of a position 4 or position 5, you know, Dota terms for those that are familiar. Now, last but not least, let's talk about the AP order. So this is the AP order here. So you go 2 points in Flog, then you max Slam. The reason for 2 points in Flog is purely for the laning stage. You're not going to put other points in Flog for quite some time. And then after Flog, you max Slam because this is your biggest like damage spike in the mid game. Maxing Slam gives you so much more damage. And then you put 1 point in Grapple just for the cooldown because it's nice to, you know, be able to have more grapples and move around more often. And then after the 1 point in Grapple, you're maxing ult. Because essentially like max ult is one of your biggest spikes, and once you have max ult and people are stunned, they're just like guaranteed dead. If you ult 2 people and you have max ult, they're gonna die for sure. And then after maxing ult, you finish with maxing off Flog, and then you put the points in your grapple because you don't really care about these other points in grapple. Yeah, the cast range on the second point in grapple is nice, but it's not mandatory a lot of the time. And if you're good, like, you know, especially if you have Majestic Leap, right? If you have Majestic Leap and superior stamina, a lot of the time you don't need the point in grapple. All right, well, that just about covers it for the Lash build. Let me know if you guys have any thoughts, comments, or questions on this build. Once again, the build ID will be in the description. And yeah, tomorrow we're gonna watch party fight night, so it's gonna be the first fight night on UPatch, so it should be really, really exciting to watch. So make sure you tune in for that. I'm gonna be live on both YouTube and Twitch, so you know, don't miss it. My Twitch is DeathyDL for those that are not familiar. And yeah, thank you guys for your support. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.